Thank you. Thank you all. Is it okay? Okay. Thank you all to be here. Today I'm going to talk about Geraldus Odonis. Um, in the slides, I will provide Odonis' view on Univocity of the term ends and try to figure out whether contemporary notion of ontological pluralism can be accounted for analogy or univocity of existence. Well, our all our conference is built thanks to Aristotle metaphysics. So I thought it was it was a good thing to put it in slide. The question which was raised long ago still is and always will be, and which puzzle us night and day, as your post on Instagram. What is being? Well, Odonis is a Franciscan friar. He was born in the 13th century. He was French. He was born in Cambridge. Taught theology at Toulouse, and is best known as an anatomist, as a physician. He has this innovative view on projectile motion. He is considered a sort of anticipator of the theory of impetus made by John Buridan. He was a strong realist in metaphysics. In his distinction, first in commentary in the sentence, he had this kind of view according to which there are nine kind of being in the posited being with creation: producible being, ideal being, intelligible being, intellected being, willable being, willed being, possible, positive, and quantitative. It's better to say that from producible being up to possible being is a kind of being that pertains just to God's mind. Regarding logic, he was interested to how to be realist for principle like non-contradiction and excluded middle. He was also a propositional realist like Walter Burley. Um, Well, now I would like to depart by set out what are the key feature of Univocity, just roughly. Hence is a general concept for Univocity, also for analogy. For Scotus is a notizia clara, is a determinable concept. In the Thomistic tradition, is a determinate concept, not taken in itself. Taken in itself, hence describe the reality very confusedly. Well, universities accept the analogical unity, being said for a primarily ontological reference. The kind of analogical unity they accept is a sort of ontological robust. How is split this kind of ontological robust? In ends as transcendental and being ontologically dependent for ends. Now, I thought that would be clear to the part by saying what is analogy, at least very, very generally. But it's also good if you maybe interact. If there is something, if there is some mistake, it's better if you tell me. For x is an ends if and only if x is strongly dependent from what is to be x. What is the sense? That's to be an ends for Socrates is to be what Socrates is. To be ends for God is to be what God is. And they both differ in the reference of to the ends. So they refer to ends as general concept, even though when I say that Socrates is ends, the est ends reference is different from God est reference. What about univocity? For all x is an ends if and only if x is weakly dependent from what is to be x. So ends in itself has its independent ontological value. Although being is not a genus, it is univocally common. If it is common, it needs to be instantiated. But how? Being instantiated to its inferior, differentiate, needs two kinds of instantiation. One, genus to species, and another one to species to individuals. According to Aristotelian motto, genus cannot be being cannot be a genus. Sorry. So Scotus preferred to describe the kind of instantiation of being to individuals like species to individuals. Why so? Uh, just because individuals add nothing to species, species get instantiated as a whole to its individual. Genus surely gets instantiated, but as a part to its individual. But what is the difference? Would be being a species. To characterize the level of universality, we have to understand what is above a species or a differential. And if being were a species, then it means that what is above the species is something that is not being, but this is contradictory. Then being a species are analogous to the extent of their instantiation, but disanalogous to the extent of their nature. Then this is a little schema of univocity of being. Socrates as ends, God as ends, have the same reference to this term. They differ in their intrinsic mode, um, and intrinsic mode does not modify being through the addition of further reality. Being and intrinsic mode are not different as realities, but as reality and its intrinsic mode. It just means are different, like formal difference in Scotistic framework. Then let's make the map to better understand what are the general concept of the difference between univocity and analogy, at least in our main actor, Scotus and Aquinas. So the question is if ends is a transcendental notion, where for transcendental notion we say that X is a transcendental, if and only if X is a coextensive property of being. If Y is an ends, Y will have its transcendental property, so they both agree. Has it a conceptual dimension? Where for conceptual dimension I mean X is conceptual, if and only if X is representative, it shows a meaning. Is it exhaustive? Exhaustive if and only if as an explanatory power on itself. For Scotus, I think that it has, but I'm not that sure for Aquinas. So if you can help me maybe later. Then if the term ends is determinate, for determinate I mean X is what it is, not in virtue of other terms. And for Scotus, it's not like that. It's surely for Aquinas. This is, oops, sorry, I don't know what I did. Okay. 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 So for Scotus, the nature of being is considered like a determinable to its determinates. In said, ille conceptus tantum determinabilis est conceptus entis, et determinans tantum est conceptus ultime differentiae. So we have desiderata for univocism, ends as transcendental, conceptual dimension of ends, exhaustivity of the term ends, determinable of determinates. So let's get back to Geraldus Odonis distinction. In distinction tree of his questiones in First Sententiarum, he tried to explain. He asked himself whether is there any common term which can be predicated both of God and creatures. If whether is there a univocal concept in common, and whether is there a univocal objective reality outside the mind signified by the common concept. Well, in the conclusion prima, we have three demonstrations. There is a meaning for all creatures and objects outside the soul. This concept is indifferent and neutral. This common definition is signified by the term ends. Well, let's start with the first argument, the argument from contradiction. All things included in an extreme of contradiction, say Odonis, agree in some reality. The extreme of contradiction in which entities agree is something like not being. The contradiction of nothingness is not nothingness, namely an ends. God and creatures are entities, then God and creatures agree in some reality. Well, what emerged is that for them to be in the same nature means just to agree in some property. But the fact is that he does not explain how is it possible. Is it possible just the agreement in a certain property to be of the same reality? He just doesn't explain it. Then there is the second question whether an ends is a common concept, neutral, indifferent. He said each definition ratio assumed with predicate causes a complexion or proposition. Complexion is a term which came out from the realist about proposition, as I said before. So definition cannot create the same complexion for all entities. The definition of reality causes its complexion. The complexion of reality's definition cannot include all the rationes of all entities. Then reality, or ends, as its proper definition. Very different. Then he continued by proving it. How to prove? When we say lux est ends, the meaning of ends is included in the meaning of lux. Instead, the same is not true for the composition like lux est substantia. Why so? Just because when we say that lux est ens, we take ens as a cumulative notion or disjunctive notion. What is a cumulative notion? X is a cumulative notion if and only if what it is to be X is to be B or A or C or V or J or F. Then we have a more clear landscape in order to understand in which sense we can make sense of lux as tense and not lux as substance, just because lux is either substance or accident. But well, he said, someone could say, when I say lux as tense, ends in this complexionem, in this preposition, is not evident in the name, not in the res. What relies under this consideration is just the fact that when I say that when I state this quantitative predicate, I just saying a very general things about the item I'm referring, but I'm not saying nothing really. I cannot say the fact that lux is an ends in reality. Well, he said the ratio is not evident as the referent of the term. The term is not its meaning, or the term is to its meaning or stand for its meaning. Then again, ends is predicated of all the reality, just because God stand to its referent, human beings stand to Socrates stand to its referent, but if I say that both are ends, I'm just stating that the term ends, the meaning of ends, make them participating, obviously for Prius or Posterius. Well, here we have Gerard of Bologna objection. Gerard of Bologna was a Thomistic scholar. He was a Carmelitan friar. He had this objection according to which I can know how to prove God's existence, but it doesn't follow that if I know God, that I know God quidditas, both in speciale or in general. Well, this argument um, relies on the difference that in medieval philosophy has been made between the God argument, God demonstration argument, and the difference between Anselm and Aquinas. For Aquinas, it's impossible to uh, show what God is before telling what are his effect. Instead, differently for Anselm, the question was different. We can explain a priori according to what God is, how it exists. Then Odonis' replies is very short. Every quidditas cognita, cognized, must be known in singular if singular. The natural reason can have the divine essence if and only if it know the divine essence in something similar to itself, and B, the cognitum is apt for a human being. Then, essentia divina and existentia divina are idem If we know its existence, we know its essence. Then, when we cognize God both in speciale and in generale. Then let's move to the third argument. The third argument is, to recap, is there a univocal objective reality outside the mind signified by that common concept? Here is his argument. Um, the meaning of ends is distributed in all the terms. Its meaning is common to what is distributed. If ends distributes its meaning to God and creatures, then ends is equally meant for both God and creatures. Then everything in which the ratio of ends is distributed participate of the meaning of the term ends. That's why we can state, at least logically, but also metaphysically, if you are a realist, that ends can be common to God and creatures. Well, he keep on by saying, in metaphysics, then is written that an ends is auton or different, is itself or different from the other. Yes, I should have added. Well, something is synchronically both a thing it is and different from the other. Or we can say an entity X is identical with itself and not identical with other entities. Uh, True for God and creatures. We can state both for God and creature. If so, ends is distributed in just one way. Necessarily because necessarily the reality includes all that is auton and different. Then the term ends cannot be equivocal. Once we have the notion of ends, it can be distributed for different terms. Then the term ends as the singular and plural, just because when we state ensia, we are referring to both God and creatures. These pluralities suppose two different nature. Well, in other part in the full book of metaphysics, it said that ens dicitur de substantia et talis, sicut sanitas de animali et urina. Odonis made 2 points. One he called dissimile, one the other simile. Um, for the simile, he said, is simile in as much as it is said of the substance to be ens as the fontana origo. Now, this language, fontana origo, came from the Boetius commentary to Predicamenta, uh, specifically in the part in which he divided equivocation by chance and intentional equivocation. He said that in the intentional equivocation we can have fontana origo or originatum. The fontana origo is what firstly participate, or for instance, of the ends like substance for being and accident derivatively. Yes, and he said of the accident to be ends as the originato. This similar in as much as in urina there is not any forma sanitatis, but all the form is in the animal. Good. Uh, Now, I just choose Geraldus Odonis for two main reasons. The first is that really the most of the literature is focused on Geraldus Odonis just for his physical theories. The second one is that he really analyzed logically all his arguments. Well, today we are seeing that in the contemporary analytic metaphysics we're seeing a revenge of analogy and univocity of being, mostly in the debate on monism about existence and pluralism about existence. Well, the uh, the rock of this renewal in the last decade has been this book made by Chris McDaniel. It's called The Fragmentation of Being. But let's read one of these main part. The generic sense of being is represented formally by the E, reverse BE, of mathematical logic. A natural thought, then, is that the specific sense of being also are best represented by quantifiers. Well, quantifiers are just the logical tools that the analytical school use to predicate, to state the existence. Well, the quantifiers, according to the Phrygian and Quinian tradition, range over all entities. Now, the criteria to understand which kind of entities exist is just what Quine said. Well, all exist, all exist according to our best scientific theory. So we can quantify of all, and we have just a sense, a meaning of being or existence. So we can say that he is a monist and also a univocist, like Peter Van Wagen. Uh, but Chris McDaniel keep saying the notion of a restricted quantifier, one that range over only some proper subset of that which the unrestricted quantifier range, is perfectly intelligible. Well, a proper subset of an unrestricted quantifier means that we can add near the E of the unrestricted quantifier a sort of a property or nature that restricted the entities on which the quantifier is ranging. Then senses of being are properly represented in a formal system by spatial restricted quantifiers. Um, for instance, Sam's happiness exists in a special sense. We can say that the quantifiers is restricted to this special sense to exist for the happiness, and we can say that something exists in a special way, and X is happiness. Restricted quantifier which range over entity, over all and only entity which are inherent to the items or individuals. Then this is another formal representation. E, which has the proper subset of abstract entities, we can say that exists an X in an abstract way, such that X is P and X is T. The advantages of this approach is that makes polyvocism compatible with quantificationism and avoid refined ways of being. Then these are the formal. These are the formal, well-written formula. The general, what is spread in the most of the literature. There is an X according to the first quantifier, such that Y is identical to X, or the second one. Well, can it make sense? Can we say analogy for this kind of ways of being? We said that for to state an analogical sense of being, we need for X to be strongly dependent from what is to be X, and Socrates and God and have a different reference to the word ends. So analogy of being is restricted to the nature of the item or individual. Instead, ways of being are restricted to fundamental expression, that is also called naturalness. The fundamental expression means just what carved at the joint the reality. Well, according to McDaniel, when we have two different ways of being, we have also a general existence. For him, general existence is just an unrestricted quantifier, which is identical to a disjunction of all the other quantifier. Then we have a general existence as a univocal concept. That's what happened basically in Scotus, and it seems to me that's what happened also in McDaniel, just because they refer to ends in the same way as the two different quantifiers refer to the general existence, but they differ in their intrinsic mode. And this is the problem when we have to say that there are ways of being. We just are saying that there exist different way of exist. So we are just stating a general existential quantifier. That's what Scott said. Ille autum perque commune aliquod contrahitur, perque commune aliquod contrahitur, that is the general existential quantifier, ad deum et creaturam sunt finitum et infinitum. These are his fundamental restriction, finitum et infinitum. Qui dicunt gradus intrinsecus ipsius. Well, Odonis has a pretty similar view on the distribution of the notion of ends. This is the argument, as we saw before. The meaning of ends is distributed in all the terms. Its meaning is common to what is distributed. If ends is distributed, distributes its meaning to God and creatures, then ends is equally meant for both God and creatures. Saying, yes, he said that his ends is distributed in just one way, like the generic existential quantifier is distributed to the other ways of being. So it's basically the same. That's why, for me, more than analogy, it seems that McDaniel would um, consider himself an analogist of being as a good univocal account. Well, just beginning with Scotus and Odonis' account of Univocity of being, in this period, I'm really puzzling about how can be a good analogical account in an analytic manner. Is there some Cayetan solution? Because for me, it seems very plausible in the sense that uh, being as multiple rationes has a no common nature, so no common existential quantifiers, different rationes related by similitude and proportion, but by a confused cognition, as Dominic yesterday pointed out. So we can say that this confused cognition, which make us, make us maybe confuse what are the different entities in the world and making us creating this general concept, is just an epistemological vicious. I don't know, but it's better to understand it, even if you have different solution. That's all. I finished. Thank you.